The room is dark now, but not completely so. There's a softness to the air, a gentle, diffused light that seems to come from nowhere in particular. Just a lingering absence of harshness that wraps everything in a quiet, hazy comfort. We are looking up, resting back deeply into the cushions or the mattress, and letting our gaze settle on the single, hypnotic focus point of the ceiling fan directly overhead. It is moving, but slowly, so slowly, on the lowest possible setting. A deliberate, gentle rotation that barely stirs the air but perfectly commands the eye. Just allow your neck to relax. Let the weight of your head sink down, and let your eyes find the very center of that slow, turning mechanism. The hum it produces is almost subliminal, a low, steady drone that feels less like a sound and more like a gentle pressure in the room. A warm, soft blanket of noise that tucks away the sharper edges of the world outside. We are going to watch it, just watch it, and describe its quiet, predictable motion, one slow revolution at a time, allowing the monotony of the observation to gently, inevitably, guide us toward sleep. The fan has three blades, let's say, three broad, heavy paddles of dark wood or perhaps a faded brass, and they move with an almost stately elegance, never hurrying, never jerky, just sweeping the same circular path over and over again. Watch the leading edge of the first blade now, the one we'll call Blade Alpha. It is approaching from the far left, a soft, dark blur against the paler ceiling. Its movement is so smooth it almost seems to defy the physics of rotation. It's more like a deliberate, slow, endless gesture. Blade Alpha glides past the light fixture at the center, passing directly overhead, and as it does, it casts a momentary, brief shadow, a fleeting absence of light that sweeps across the periphery of your vision, a quiet, repetitive visual tick that anchors your attention without exciting it. Just a passing shadow, gone almost before it is fully formed. Now, Blade Alpha is receding into the right side of the circle, slowing visually as it stretches out toward the furthest point before it begins its slow curve back around. And following it, maintaining the exact same distance, the exact same unhurried pace, is Blade Beta. Blade Beta is an echo, a twin to Alpha, moving through the same space, tracing the same path, and offering the same brief, gentle shadow as it passes the center point. It is the predictability that matters, the comforting certainty that Blade Beta will behave exactly as Blade Alpha did, a quiet, soothing redundancy that denies your mind any element of surprise or drama. There is no urgency in this movement, no sudden acceleration, no grinding halt, just the continuous, even flow of one blade following the next, a perfect, mechanical meditation. And now Blade Gamma begins its slow entrance from the left. Gamma, the third of the trio, completes the pattern, the quiet geometry of the rotation. It is entering now, moving toward the center, the hub that seems utterly still, utterly fixed in place, even as the world spins slowly beneath it. Blade Gamma passes the center, casting its subtle, fleeting shadow, and begins its long, gentle recession toward the right. We watch it until it begins its slow curve back, and then our attention returns almost automatically to blade alpha, which is now completing its turn and preparing to make its next pass. This is the first full rotation. It took time, a satisfyingly long span of unhurried minutes, and yet nothing has changed. Everything is exactly as it was. The blades are the same, the speed is the same, and the subtle hum is the same. This is what we are here for, the relentless, peaceful sameness. Let's follow blade alpha again, observing its characteristics. Notice how the light catches the surface as it moves, a slow, gentle sheen that travels down the length of the wood, a quiet highlight that slides from the base to the tip. It passes over the center, that brief eclipse of light, a perfectly harmless, perfectly dull event, and then it glides away. We are not counting the revolutions, not measuring the exact speed, just observing the quality of the motion. It's a slow motion dance, a deliberate, quiet turning that is utterly absorbing, not because it is interesting, but because it is not. The mind craves complexity, but when it is given this much gentle, continuous simplicity, it begins to tire of its own alertness. It finds no puzzle to solve, no tension to hold on to, only this sweeping, endless cycle. And so it starts to let go, to allow the thoughts to detach like little wisps of cloud in the wake of the blades. Here comes blade beta again, steady, unwavering, following its partner's exact footsteps through the air. You can hear the faintest, almost imperceptible sound as its tip cuts the air. A subtle whoosh, a whisper of displacement, but it's so slight, so predictable, that it becomes part of the texture of the quiet. Blade beta sweeps past the light, casts the momentary shadow, and then begins its own smooth arc away, receding into the background only to reappear moments later. And then blade gamma, completing the triangle, the final point of the peaceful rotation. Gamma approaches, steady and true, its shadow brief and gone, its trajectory a perfect mirror of the two that preceded it. The blades are a gentle clock, marking time in large, slow, unhurried increments. You don't need to know the time. The only time that matters is the time between now and when you surrender to sleep, and that time is being marked perfectly and calmly by the steady motion overhead. Now blade alpha re-enters the primary field of view, beginning the third rotation that we have consciously followed. Focus on the center, the still point, the housing where the motor quietly resides. The blades emerge from this stationary core, a constant beginning and ending of the motion. The housing might be an aged white, or perhaps a decorative bronze, but it is still. It is the eye of the gentle storm, the fixed axis of this soft, hypnotic turning. The stability of the center is as important as the motion of the periphery. Blade alpha passes the center and the shadow touches your eyes, a slight, soothing interruption of the light. Imagine that shadow sweeping away any stray anxieties, wiping the slate clean with each pass. It is a gentle, repetitive erasure of thought. Alpha moves to the edge, slows, and prepares its slow curve back. Blade Beta follows, its presence a quiet reminder of the rhythm. Whoosh, shadow, recede, whoosh, shadow, recede. The words themselves take on the quality of the motion, becoming soft, repetitive gestures of sound that require no processing. Your eyelids might be getting heavy now, and that's all right. You don't need to keep them fully open. Even through half-closed eyes, the motion is still apparent, still perfectly visible, a soothing, blurred repetition. And Blade Gamma makes its move, completing the cycle, restoring the visual balance of the slow rotation. The air it pushes down is barely felt, just a subtle, cool press against the skin, another gentle sensory input that contributes to the overall feeling of calm and stillness. Gamma is gone now, completing its arc. And now Blade Alpha begins the next, the fourth rotation. Let's observe the texture of the blades as they move. If they are wood, can you imagine the faint grain, the lines that run the length of the material, blurring and then resolving as the light hits them at different angles? A very subtle, quiet shimmer that is constant but never distracting. The color of the blade might be a muted brown, a color that absorbs light and softens the visual impact, keeping everything gentle and low-key. Alpha passes the center, the soft, dark shadow sweeps, and then it is moving away, its trajectory perfectly smooth. There is no effort in its movement, just a quiet, sustained momentum. It is a perfect metaphor for letting go. Sustained motion without any sense of strain or struggle. Now comes Blade Beta. It feels like a long time since we last saw Beta, yet the timing is perfect. The even spacing is the core of the hypnotic effect. Imagine the perfect geometric precision of the angle between beta and gamma, beta and alpha. They are held in a silent, mathematical embrace, each one equally distant from the other, respecting the space and pace of its neighbor. Beta sweeps past, the low hum of the motor is steady, and the world is settling. And Blade Gamma completes this rotation, the fifth, the final pass before Alpha begins again. It is a continuous narrative of going and returning, of presence and absence, of light and shadow. The simplicity is profound, and the mind, weary of complexity, is slowly accepting the invitation to cease its analytical work. It is enough just to watch, just to hear, just to feel the subtle, soft air. Blade Alpha returns. We are on the sixth repetition. Follow the slow, deliberate tip of the blade as it traces its vast, quiet circle against the ceiling. The ceiling itself might be textured, a subtle landscape of soft imperfections, but the blade ignores all of that, moving through the air with a perfect, clean path. It passes the center, the familiar shadow sweeps, and it glides away. This slow, predictable movement is a form of active meditation, but one so gentle, so lacking in interest, that it requires no focus, no effort. You are simply allowing the pattern to imprint itself on the quiet canvas of your resting mind. Blade Beta now takes its turn, arriving exactly on schedule, never early, never late. The reliability is soothing. The certainty is calming. The blade passes, the air stirs, and the sound remains a low, comfortable drone. And Blade Gamma completes the rotation. We can hear the faint, continuous whir of the motor, a sound that has now merged entirely with the stillness of the room. It is the sound of time passing without incident, without demand. Gamma recedes, and the pause before Alpha returns is the moment of deepest quiet, the subtle shift in the air before the next repetition begins. Blade Alpha returns for the 7th cycle. Let us observe the central light fixture this time. As the blade passes, the light is momentarily blocked, but the glow is still there, diffused around the edge of the blade, a quiet halo following the dark paddle. It is a subtle interaction of light and shadow, but one without consequence. Alpha passes and the light is restored immediately, fully, completely. No lingering darkness, just the return to the gentle, diffused glow. Blade Beta follows, sweeping over the center, performing its function with perfect, quiet fidelity. Imagine the dust that might have settled on the stationary parts, a subtle, almost invisible layer. Yet the blades themselves are clean, kept free by the very air they move. It's a self-cleaning movement, a continuous renewal of the circle. Beta passes, the shadow moves, and the movement continues. And Blade Gamma follows. The sound of the rotation is not intrusive. It's a sound that says, everything is fine, everything is moving slowly, everything is exactly as it should be. Gamma sweeps past, the sound is steady, and the mind is settling deeper, deeper into the peace of the unexciting observation. The cycle continues. Blade Alpha returns for the 8th time. As you watch, don't try to keep track. If you lose count, it doesn't matter. The important thing is the continuity, the sense of endless rhythmic flow. The mind is trying to stop engaging, to stop analyzing, to stop solving. And this slow, predictable motion is giving it permission to pause, to simply exist in the quiet rhythm. Alpha passes, the shadow sweeps, and the movement continues on and on. Blade Beta now. Imagine the small, internal workings of the fan motor, the copper coil, the simple axle, the quiet, sustained energy that keeps this gentle motion going, without complaint, without variation. It is a small engine of tranquility, powered by nothing more than the desire to keep turning slowly, steadily, quietly. Beta passes the center, and the quiet whir remains constant. And Blade Gamma finishes the rotation. There is a small, quiet satisfaction in the perfection of the cycle. 3 blades moving at the same speed, separated by the same angle, performing the same task with quiet, unhurried grace. Gamma recedes, and the brief moment of quiet before Alpha returns is the perfect, soft exhale of the room. Blade Alpha is back. 9th pass. Let's focus on the absolute stillness of the ceiling around the fan. The air in the rest of the room is still, except for the gentle displacement caused by the blades. This is a controlled, contained movement, a circle of quiet activity within a larger space of deep stillness. The contrast is soothing. Alpha passes, the shadow is brief, and it glides away. Blade beta is here. The light, diffused and gentle, seems to soften the edges of the blades, making them less distinct, more of a suggestion of movement than a sharp reality. The boundary between the blade and the air is blurred by the slowness of the motion and the softness of the light. Beta passes, and the sound is constant, low and steady. And blade gamma returns. The rotation is a pendulum that never quite swings back. It just keeps turning forward, a slow, continuous march around the circle. Gamma passes, and the mind is drifting now, pulled along by the steady current of the sound and the motion. The words are becoming sounds, the thoughts are becoming shadows, and the quiet is becoming deeper. Blade Alpha begins the 10th pass. We have been watching for some time now, and yet the experience is timeless. Nothing has changed. The fan is still turning slowly, gently, perfectly. The monotony is working its quiet magic. Alpha passes the center. The shadow is a momentary touch of coolness, and it glides away. Blade Beta is following, always following, maintaining the perfect separation. The fan is a symbol of quiet order, a machine dedicated to the maintenance of a gentle, repetitive state. The lack of variation is the source of the deep, deep calm. Beta passes, the hum is steady, and the eyes are resting. And blade gamma completes the rotation. 3 blades, 3 shadows, 3 soft whispers of displaced air. The cycle is perfect, and the mind is accepting the stillness. Gamma recedes, and the quiet pause before Alpha returns is the moment of deepest, most profound rest. We continue the slow, gentle description of Blade Alpha on its 11th pass. Imagine the dust motes in the air, barely visible, caught in the subtle current of the fan, moving in slow, gentle spirals. The fan is creating a tiny, self-contained weather system of calm, circulating the peaceful air above your head. Alpha passes, the shadow is a soft sweep, and it moves on. Blade Beta takes its turn. The repetition is the key, the absolute certainty that this movement will continue predictably, endlessly, without fail. There is no need to anticipate, no need to worry about what comes next. What comes next is simply the next blade, moving in the same way at the same speed. Beta passes, the soft whir is constant, and your attention is fading into the comfortable drone. And blade gamma follows, completing the cycle. The ceiling fan is a quiet promise of continuity, a guarantee of unexciting, reliable presence. Gamma recedes, and the mind is almost completely still now, resting deep in the quiet wake of the rotation. The words are simply sounds, and the movement is simply rhythm. Blade Alpha returns its 12th pass. Even if your eyes are closed now, you can still perceive the motion, the slight shift in the air, the momentary auditory change as the blade passes overhead. The sound and the sensation are now merged, a perfect, gentle, repetitive signal of calm. Alpha passes, the shadow touches your eyelids and it moves on. Blade beta follows. The sound of the fan is now the sound of the room's quiet breathing, a long, slow inhale and a gentle, drawn-out exhale. Everything is slowing down, settling into the deep, easy rhythm of rest. Beta passes, the hum is steady and the quiet is deepening. And blade gamma completes the rotation. The fan is a wheel of soft, constant turning, a perfect engine of sleep. Gamma recedes, and the pause before alpha returns is the softest moment of quiet surrender. Blade alpha begins its 13th pass. We are just flowing with the motion, allowing the gentle turning to carry us further and further away from the concerns of the day. The worries are distant, faint echoes in a far-off room, and the only reality is the quiet presence of the fan overhead. Alpha passes, the shadow sweeps, and the movement continues. Blade beta follows, steady and true. The color of the blade is dark, absorbing the light, a quiet contrast to the pale ceiling, a perfect balance of light and darkness, motion and stillness. Beta passes, the sound is a soft drone and the mind is resting. And blade gamma returns, finishing the cycle. This is the quiet description of a peaceful, unhurried task. The fan is working, but it is working slowly, gently, with no strain or effort. Gamma recedes and the quiet is almost absolute. Blade alpha begins the 14th pass. The rhythm of the rotation is now imprinted on the quiet surface of your mind. A simple, four-part beat: alpha, beta, gamma, quiet pause. Alpha passes, the shadow touches, and the movement flows on. Blade beta is here, its presence a guarantee of the cycle. There is no beginning and no end, only the continuous, gentle turning. The predictability is the softest lullaby. Beta passes, the sound is constant and the quiet deepens. And blade gamma completes the rotation. The fan is a slow, steady sentinel guarding the gates of sleep, ensuring that the quiet order is maintained. Gamma recedes and the mind is letting go, allowing the final, heavy surrender to rest. Blade alpha begins the 15th pass. The slowness of the motion is the most important part. If it were fast, it would be frantic, distracting, a whirl of chaotic energy. But it is slow, deliberate, and deeply soothing. Alpha passes, the shadow sweeps, and the quiet continues its soft, steady reign. Blade beta follows, maintaining the perfect, elegant pace. The sound of the hum is now barely audible, having merged completely with the sound of your own quiet, deep breathing. Beta passes, the rhythm is constant, and the depth of the quiet is profound. And blade gamma completes the cycle. We are simply following the flow, one blade after the next, one soft whisper of air after the next. Gamma recedes and the long, deep rest is almost here. The voice is getting softer now, blending with the sound of the fan itself, becoming part of the gentle, continuous hum. Blade Alpha returns. The cycle continues. The motion is endless. The quiet is deep. The rest is coming. Blade Beta follows, steady, predictable, soothing. Blade Gamma finishes. The quiet is absolute. The flow is perfect. The mind is still. The endless, gentle turning of the fan, the continuous soft presence of the sound, the rhythm of the shadow passing and returning. This is the quiet narrative of perfect stillness, the unexciting, continuous story that leads only to rest. We are simply watching the blades, one by one, again and again, allowing the monotony to deepen the quiet, allowing the repetition to smooth the edges of thought. The light is dim, the air is soft, and the motion is slow. The stillness is complete, even as the fan continues its unhurried, gentle, perfect rotation. The steady, unwavering nature of the fan's operation is a kind of anchor for the drifting mind, giving it just enough gentle stimulation to keep it from worrying, yet not enough to spark true engagement or alertness. It's a very clever trick, this dedicated dullness, a purposeful absence of excitement that proves to be more effective than any sudden lullaby or jarring sound. The eye follows the curve of Blade Alpha as it continues its 16th revolution, noting the slight catch of light on the dust shield where the blade meets the housing. Even that small detail, that minute imperfection of the machine, becomes a point of tranquil focus. Alpha sweeps past, a slow-moving bar of soft shadow, and the air it moves presses gently down, a fleeting caress of cool displacement. And then it recedes, stretching out into the periphery of our vision, drawing the visual line back around the vast, pale circle of the ceiling. And now, Blade Beta makes its predictable approach. The time elapsed since Blade Alpha passed is always the same, a perfect division of the circle into 3 equal parts. It is this geometric harmony that is so satisfying to the subconscious mind. There is a rightness, a simple, unchallenging perfection to the pattern. Beta comes closer, its slow, measured progress a promise of continuity. It passes the center, the shadow falls and lifts, and the gentle, persistent whir of the motor remains the dominant sound of this quiet space. Beta moves away, its slow retreat confirming the stability of the cycle. We can almost feel the air settling back into place in its wake, only to be moved again by the blade that follows. Blade Gamma is now entering from the left, a steady, dark presence against the pale ceiling. Gamma is the closer of the rotation, the final punctuation mark before the cycle begins anew. It is moving with the exact same weight, the same inertia, the same unhurried pace as the other two. Observe the slight, smooth arc of the tip of the blade as it turns, a perfect curve, a simple, elegant line of motion that never falters. Gamma passes the center, the brief shadow is cast, and it too recedes. The flow is seamless, the quiet is profound, and the mind is heavy with rest. The space before Blade Alpha returns is the quietest moment of the entire cycle, the deep, soft breath of the room. Blade Alpha is back again, beginning the 17th revolution. Let's focus on the subtle color variations on the blade. Perhaps the underside is slightly darker than the top, or maybe the wood has aged unevenly, giving it a subtle internal texture that reveals itself only when the blade is moving slowly and the light is soft. This gentle observation of detail that has no consequence, is the perfect work for the sleepy mind. Alpha passes, the shadow sweeps, and the quiet flow continues. We are not rushing. We are simply flowing with the slow, steady current of the fan's motion. Blade Beta makes its approach, perfectly spaced, perfectly timed. Imagine the gentle friction in the bearing of the motor, that quiet, steady resistance that transforms electrical energy into this perfect, slow, rotational piece. The motor is a tireless heart, beating out a slow, steady pulse of whir, 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 a sound so consistent it becomes a comforting silence. Beta passes the center, the light is momentarily eclipsed, and the blade glides away. The motion is smooth, constant, and deeply reassuring. And Blade Gamma completes this rotation. The continuous turning is an act of quiet negation, a systematic denial of any sudden movement or jarring sound. It is a commitment to the lowest possible level of sensory input, a promise kept with quiet, mechanical fidelity. Gamma sweeps past, the final pass of the rotation, and the brief stillness before the next blade returns is the signal for deeper relaxation. Blade Alpha returns, the 18th pass. Look at the shadows on the ceiling itself, cast not by the blades but by the subtle, low-intensity light. The fan's central housing might cast a fixed, circular shadow around the hub, a dark halo of permanence that emphasizes the rotation happening around it. Alpha's moving shadow sweeps over this fixed shadow, a momentary complexity that resolves itself instantly into the simple, continuing flow. Alpha passes, and the rhythm is constant. Blade Beta is approaching now, following the perfect, predetermined path. Your breathing is settling into a deep, slow pattern now, matching the unhurried pace of the fan. The depth of the quiet is immense, and the sound of the fan is the softest punctuation mark in a long, continuous sentence of silence. Beta passes, the air stirs, and the gentle whir is constant. And Blade Gamma completes the rotation. The simplicity of the fan's operation is the key to its hypnotic power. There are no flashing lights, no complex maneuvers, no surprises. Only the perfect, smooth, slow, and gentle turning. Gamma recedes, and the mind is heavy, sinking deeper into the soft, comforting darkness. Blade Alpha begins the 19th cycle. Let's observe the small, almost imperceptible wobble in the rotation. Even the most balanced fan has a tiny imperfection, a slight, almost non-existent sway as it turns. This small imperfection is actually comforting. It reminds us that this is a real object in a real room, not a sterile digital simulation. The slight, soft variation prevents the mind from becoming too rigidly focused, allowing it a tiny, gentle space to drift. Alpha passes, the shadow sweeps, and the quiet flow continues. Blade beta is on its way. The light fixture at the center, the fixed point, is now just a soft, blurred disk of gentle light, a quiet sun around which the dark, slow-moving planets of the blade's orbit. The light is not bright enough to stimulate, only enough to softly define the motion. Beta passes, the light dims momentarily, and the gentle hum is steady. And blade gamma completes the rotation. The air in the room is soft, still, and cool, gently nudged by the slow turning overhead. This feeling of being suspended in a quiet, undisturbed space is the essence of deep rest. Gamma recedes, and the slow, deep breath of the room is almost silent. Blade Alpha returns for the 20th pass. 20 full, slow, unhurried revolutions that have led us deeper and deeper into this state of quiet surrender. The voice is a soft drone now, blending with the fan, a continuous, low-level flow of sound that denies the mind any opportunity to fully surface into wakefulness. Alpha passes, the shadow is brief, and it glides away into the quiet darkness. Blade Beta is approaching. Imagine the feeling of the heavy wood of the blade, its solid, dense weight contributing to the slow, steady inertia of the motion. This heaviness is important. It suggests permanence, a deep, unwavering commitment to the slow pace. Beta passes the center. The subtle sound of the air displacement is almost a whisper, and the mind is settling, settling, settling. And blade gamma completes the rotation. 3 blades, 3 soft shadows, 3 gentle whispers. The perfection of the cycle is complete and the quiet is profound. Gamma recedes and the mind is now floating, carried on the slow, steady current of the sound and the motion. Blade Alpha begins the next cycle. The continuous nature of this experience is the final, gentle trick. There is no stopping point, no conclusion to wait for, only the endless, hypnotic recurrence. The only way out is through the gates of sleep, and the fan is patiently escorting you to them. Alpha passes, the shadow sweeps, and the quiet flow continues its soft, rhythmic song. Blade Beta follows. The sound of the motor is a low, minor key chord, a fundamental tone in the orchestra of quiet. It doesn't modulate, doesn't change pitch, just maintains its steady, constant frequency. This auditory stability is deeply, profoundly soothing. Beta passes, the light dims, and the mind is at rest. And blade gamma completes the rotation. The observation is perfect, the description is gentle, and the flow is continuous. Gamma recedes, and the space before alpha returns is the deep, soft moment of quiet surrender. The fan turns slowly, gently, perfectly. The quiet is complete and the movement is endless. The sound is steady and the mind is still.